So I'm not gonna lie, one of my favorite archetypes in Magic is Enchantress, and it does have one small problem though, and that is that basically every Enchantress deck ends up being green and something. And you may not see that as a problem, but when a necessary way to build the deck includes a particular color, that is a bit of a limiting factor for me. And it's the same problem I have with Aristocrats. Like, Aristocrats is one of my most played deck types as well, but if you don't have black, it's very hard to get one of those decks online. So it is a limitation of that as well. However, Wizards of the Coast decided to be very, very kind to me today, and they released an Esper precon that is an Enchantress deck. This is the Miracle Worker precon, and I think you are going to very much enjoy what it is doing. It's very good out of the box, but we're going to go ahead and tweak it to make it a little better. And as with all these videos, the tweak amount is going to be about $15 worth. We're going to cut as many cards as we can out and add in as many good cards as we can in, with about $15 available to us, so that it's not going to cost you too much to actually upgrade this thing. You ready? Let's go ahead and get into stuff. The face commander for this deck is Aminatou the Veil Piercer. At the beginning of your upkeep, you are allowed to surveil 2, which lets you look at the top 2 cards of your library and put either one of them in the graveyard and either one of them on top of the deck. Also, every enchantment card in your hand has Miracle, which means if it is the first card you drew this turn, you reduce its cost by 4, and that is an astounding effect, let me tell you. The secondary commander in this deck is Master of Keys, who lets you put X/1/1 counters on him and mill twice X cards when he comes out, and also every enchantment card in your graveyard gets Escape. He really wants the enchantments to be in your graveyard already, but he doesn't discount them like the commander. For this reason, we're going to go ahead and call him a recursion piece, and we're going to keep Aminatou as the face commander of the deck. Looking at the actual deck list as it comes out, we have access to 3 board wipes already, all of which are fantastic. Terminus is a board wipe that has miracles, so we can manipulate it to the top and cast it when we need to for 1 mana. Time Wipe is a phenomenal board wipe in a deck that wants to keep its commander online, since it drops the commander into our hand. And Doomwake Giant will board wipe anything that is 1/1 off the board anytime that we play an enchantment. And of course, subsequent enchantments will stack up with that, so if we play 3 enchantments during a turn, we can go ahead and just burn away all problematic cards on the board. Speaking of burning, Ancient Cellar Spawn is in here to give us some burn damage. We've got a bunch of cards that allow us to copy things, including a wonderful reprint of Ondu Spirit Dancer. The draw package is very consistent. Brainstorm, Brainstone, Read the Bones. These are all good ways to not only draw cards, but also manipulate the top of our deck for our commander. Aminatou's Augury is also a little interesting here, but it may end up going off the cutting room floor by the time we're done. We, of course, have one of the new rooms in the deck, and this is a combat room. If one of our creatures deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card, which is wonderful. And we have Mesa Enchantress in here as the only real Enchantress available in our colors. Most Enchantresses are green, and she draws us cards for white, which is perfectly fine. We have a couple ways to protect our commander and ourselves with Timely Ward and Sphere of Safety. We have Archetype of Imagination to try to get in there and win the game. Our ramp package is very robust, including not only cards like Azorius Signet, Arcane Signet, Orzhov Signet, but also cards like Monologue Tax, which will give us lots and lots of treasures without having to spend too much into it via resources. We can also discount all of our enchantments a little further with cards like Starfield Mystic, which is great. My favorite included in here, though, is the Demon of Fate's Design, letting us basically cast a spell for free if we swap our life total for the mana cost instead. So if we have an 8 mana card in hand, we pay 8 life, and we play it without its mana cost. It's probably one of the most important cards in the deck, in my opinion. For recursion, we've got Auramancer and, of course, the previously mentioned Master of Keys. Redress Fate, which will drop all of our enchantments onto the battlefield instantly, which is just wonderful. And Spirit Sister's Call and Metamorphosis Fanatic. These are okay includes. We'll talk about them a bit later. The removal package for the deck is actually pretty robust. We've got Cast Out to get rid of stuff with an enchantment. We've got Utter End to get rid of any non-land permanent. We've got a counter spell in here. We've got a Swords to Plowshare. Eldest Reborn is a wonderful force everybody to sacrifice style card while being an enchantment. There are some strange includes in here, though, and we'll get into those when we talk about the cuts. The win con of the deck seems to be getting enough tokens on the board to lethal our opponents, and the best cards by far at this are going to be Shark Typhoon and Sigil of the Empty Throne. Everything else in here, again, we'll talk about them a little more when we get to that section of the video. Top deck manipulation is super important in a deck like this, and this deck is stacked with ways to scry and manipulate the top and see the top of our deck at any time. And One with the Multiverse is my favorite include out of all of these. This is the first precon reprint of this, and this is a wonderfully fair Omniscience style card. This is my favorite version of the Omniscient style free spell card, and having access to 2 cards that give us free spells is fantastic. There's also a tiny What's Yours is Mine strategy in here with Athreos and Avadox the Mind Flail, and these are welcome includes in my opinion. We have a single tutor in Moon-based Cleric, and we have another room because of course the deck needed more rooms, and this one is kind of interesting. It's basically a Voltron-y room that also turns all of our non-land permanents and spells into enchantments, which has certain implications, I'm sure. I think it's a wonderful card. I don't think it's terrible. I just think the Voltron part is kind of lost. The land package is really missed though. Every time Wizards makes a 3-color deck, we get all kinds of tapped lands. We have 3 sets of bounce lands, we have 3 sets of temple lands, and all of these I just really am not a big fan of. I'm okay with the fetching land package. The Omni land package though includes the thriving lands, which in a hyper budget deck I'm okay with dealing with, but please Wizards, we have better options than these days. Let's go ahead and nix the thriving lands out of future decks, okay? I really don't want these in. And instead of Arcane Sanctum, just start giving us the landscape lands you made in Modern Horizons 3. Those are way better for this particular slot. And the utility lands in this deck are great. Bojuka Bog does a lot of work here. Holomar Depths is wonderful, and Hall of Heliod's Generosity gives you recursion on top of being able to manipulate the top of your deck. It is a perfect include in a deck like this. I think the deck is very great out of the box, but there's a lot of tweaks we got to make, so let's talk about stuff that needs to go before we start improving what the deck is trying to do. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what needs to leave, and the first on the chopping block for me is Amanatu's Augury. While exiling the top 8 and casting some spells for free is great, paying 8 mana into it is just not wonderful, and our commander doesn't discount this down because it's not an enchantment, so I just do not see this card as being online as often as we would like it to be. Thirst for Meaning is the weakest draw card in the deck, so let's go ahead and cut that out. Bottomless Pool is a combat draw card, which is wonderful if we were a combat-centric deck. Yes, we have to win with our tokens, but we do not necessarily need that locker room draw in this deck. There's lots of decks I think locker room is going to be great for, but this one, it just kind of does some work, but not enough. Phenomenal Investigators is just not doing a lot for us. At 4 mana, having access to a horror enchantment creature token is okay, but I think this works better in Aristocrat strategies as a replacement for cards dying. The doubt side of this, though, at the beginning of your end step, you can return non-land permanent to your hand if you do draw a card. That's all right, but I really don't want to be putting things like our enchantments that we're discounting back in our hand where we have to pay full price for them. And Read the Bones is getting replaced with a better version of it during the deck upgrades. That's going to go. Archetype of Imagination gives all of our stuff evasion, which is fantastic if we had a better go-wide strategy, but we don't. We have a go-wide strategy, but we don't have enough dedication to it, so I think the archetype is a bit overcosted. As for the ramp, I don't think we need Sad Robot or Burnished Heart here, or Command Sphere. They're not really pulling a lot of weight. And the Life Insurance, while it is a okay card, it is a forced lose life create treasure token, and there are too many ways for our opponents to use this to kill us. Fighting an Aristocrat deck with a Life Insurance on the board is a nightmare. Recursion, we're going to cut the Auramancer and the Metamorphosis Fanatic. Auramancer, we've got a better version we'll talk about here in a bit, and the Fanatic is, again, a bit overcosted and just not that great. It gets a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, and I'd rather have stuff that reanimates enchantments. For removal, Return to Dust is very overcosted in non-budget decks, and Dream Eater is very overcosted in basically any deck that is not, say, Sphinx Kindred, so we're going to nix that away. For token producers, Soaring Lightbringer is not doing enough. Ink Shield is situational. It depends on dealing with other combat decks, which is not always guaranteed. And Entreat the Angels is not an enchantment, and its ability is wonderful, but it does require us to sink lots of mana into making it work. If you like the card, there's plenty of decks I think it goes in. This is one that I think we can remove it from, however. For our top deck manipulation, let's go ahead and cut the Otherworldly Gaze and the Telling Time. They are great cards in their own right, but they do make us go card advantage negative, at least for the Otherworldly Gaze. Prognostic Sphinx is overcosted, and we have no way to discount it, and Verge Rangers is just not doing enough at the top of our library. Next, let's talk about the cuts in the land section. I think all of the bounce lands and all of the temples have got to go. They do not do enough in this particular style of deck, so I am nixing them out entirely. The Thriving Lands are also leaving for the same reason, and the Arcane Sanctum is leaving for the same reason. It may be a Shrine land, but if it comes into play tapped and doesn't give us any benefit, I do not want to be running it. So let's nix all of those out. With that said, that's a lot of cards to get rid of, so let's go ahead and talk about the cards that we are adding in to replace these. So that's all the cuts out of the way. Let's go ahead and instead talk about the cards that we are adding in to improve this deck. So firstly, I liked the spell copies sub-theme that we had in here, so let's go ahead and supplement that with a copy enchantment and a Storm of Saruman. Both of these can be discounted by our commander, and they give us immense access to free cards. Being able to copy an important card on the board is great, and copying cards like Storm of Saruman will cause you to win the game outright very quickly. Let's go ahead and talk about our draw section next. Aminatou the Fate Shifter, the original Aminatou, I think belongs in here. Being able to draw a card, then put any card on top of your library, allows us to fix dead hands. If we have a hand with an enchantment in it that just does not need to be in there, we can swap it out with her ability, and then the new Aminatou can discount it for us. Also, being able to blink and permanent we have has some niche situations where it tends to be very, very good. And I'm not going to lie, that -6 is okay. We're never going to get to it. I think the +1 is enough of a reason to run this. Brain Surge is an auto-include in here for me. Drawing 4 and putting 2 cards from our hand on top of our library is immensely powerful. It allows us to sculpt our stuff super well. I've added in an opt and a consider in here as well, and we'll talk about why in a bit. They allow us to draw cards on our opponent's turns, which will be very important when you see some of the other upgrades. Entity Tracker is a blue enchantress that we now have access to, so let's go ahead and throw that in. I also need to put this in Galea now that it's out. And Matsulanti the Great Door gives us more access to draw on our opponent's turns. Also, sometimes we can get that big mana from the back end, so it's just a fantastic card, and you'll see why drawing cards on our opponent's turns is going to be so important here in a bit. And by a bit, I mean right now. Let's go ahead and talk about Leyline of Anticipation. This card says that if we have it in our opening hand, it comes down for free, and we can cast spells as though they had flash. So, the way our commander works is if we draw a card, it gets Miracle. We can cast it for 4 mana less, which is almost free, as long as it was the first card we drew that turn. This normally limits us to only being able to play 1 discounted enchantment per turn. With Leyline of Anticipation, though, we have the ability to get 4 enchantments online for discounted costs, giving us a net discount of 16 by the time the turn cycle is over. This can cause us to overwhelm our opponents very, very quickly, and I think this is a card that should be in any version of this deck. Absolutely. Then we have Heliod Radiant Dawn, which is replacing the Auramancer. This gives us the ability to return an enchantment from our graveyard to our hand, which is already good, but if we transform Heliod, it's another copy of Leyline of Anticipation, giving us even more ways to cast spells on our opponent's turns. And also, this discounts those spells by 1 more, so we get to discount cards like the Mind's Dilation we're adding in by 5. Mind's Dilation says that anytime our opponents cast their first spell, we can yank a card from the top of their library and then cast that card for free like we were playing in its Holly deck. This should supplement the What's Yours is Mine strategy that was already in the deck. As for token production that was in the original version, let's throw an Archon of Sun's Grace in. I think these 2/2 tokens that come out of the battlefield when enchantments touch the battlefield are way more consistent than what was originally in the deck. And as far as interaction and removal, I think Grasp of Fate does a lot of work here, getting rid of 3 permanents when it touches the board. Imprisoned in the Moon is one of the best ways to turn a commander offline, and a fairly basic counter spell will do lots of work for us as well. Let's go ahead and upgrade our ramp section with Inquisitive Glimmer to make our enchantments cost 1 less and our unlocks cost 1 less, and also Charitable Levy, which allows us to get a plains out of the deck and also just happens to be an enchantment, which is wonderful for our deck's theme. And we'll protect our commander a little better with cards like Swiftfoot Boots and the Nurok Stealth Suit, though in a non-budget version of the deck, I think Nurok Stealth Suit should probably just go ahead and be a Lightning Greaves. We are very, very commander-centric, which is why I've chosen to keep these in, because we do need to make sure our commander does not go away. As for the land section, let's go ahead and get rid of all of those tapped lands, like I said, and let's instead add in Darkwater Catacombs, Skycloud Expanse, Desolate Mire. These are wonderful, wonderful cards that do a lot of work for us as untapped land. Let's also get some more untapped lands down with Prairie Stream and Sunken Hollow. These are searchable Tango lands, which do a lot of work for not a whole lot of money. Let's also add in a River of Tears, as it is 10 cents, and it is a Dimir land that we can use technically. And to supplement it, to make it a little more consistent, let's go ahead and upgrade our Fetching Lands package with Contaminated Landscape, Esper Panorama, and the 2 other Esper Panoramas that just happen to be Power Crab versions of it. Also, the original version of the deck didn't contain an Exotic Orchard for some reason, so let's go ahead and throw that in. And for utility lands, let's also add in more ways to draw on our opponent's turns to supplement that Leyline strategy. Secluded Steppe, Barren Moor, and Lonely Sandbar all can cycle for 1 mana, allowing us to draw cards on an opponent's turn. And of course, Irrigated Farmland and Fetid Pools are dual lands, which also do the exact same thing for 2 mana. Being able to draw cards on our opponent's turn is far more important than you may think, so let's go ahead and supplement that strategy as best we can. That said, I think these upgrades make the deck far more potent, but let's do a quick gameplay to show you how the deck runs now that we've added these new upgrades. Let's look at an example of a keepable hand. While this hand does not have access to any kind of ramp, it does have the Nurok Stealth Suit, which will be important for keeping our commander online as long as possible. We also have Ondu Spirit Dancer for follow-up turns, and it's got 3 lands and access to all of our deck's colors from the get-go. I think this is a keepable hand, so let's go ahead and draw our opening card and see what we get. We'll play the Barren Moor down and go to the next turn, and we get a Sunken Hollow. This is wonderful, but we don't have the basic lands to make this work, so let's go ahead and drop it down on the board as a tapped land for now. As much as I don't like eating that, I would have liked to play the Nurok Stealth Suit. It's more important to go ahead and get it online in a subsequent turn, as we don't have 2 basic lands in the hand. The next turn comes up, and we have an Ash Barrens. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay 2 mana and get that Nurok Stealth Suit online. We're going to play a Promising Vein, and let's go ahead and get this Ash Barrens out of our hand to thin our deck a little bit for the shuffling we're going to be doing with our commander. It's turn 5, and we've drawn the Leyline of Anticipation. So this changes our strategy a bit. Normally, we would get our commander online immediately, but instead, I think we need to play the Arakar Waste and tap 4 to play the Leyline. This will allow us to get our commander online at a more safe junction if we need to. Also, just having access to it now will help our strategy going forward. It's turn 5, and we've drawn Ponder, so let's go ahead and get our commander online and give it the Stealth Suit so that it is protected for subsequent turns. It's turn 6, and we are surveilling an Archon of Sun's Grace and a Plains. These are both whiffs, so we're going to throw them to the graveyard in hopes of getting an enchantment up from the top of our deck. And we get a Shark Typhoon instead of what we yanked away. So let's go ahead and put that Shark Typhoon to use by paying 2 mana and dropping that on the board immediately. We have 3 mana available to us, so we're going to copy enchantment that Shark Typhoon, generating a 3/3 shark. It's turn 7, and we have a Darksteel mutation and an irrigated farmland available to us. Let's go ahead and keep the irrigated farmland on top, and we'll throw away the Darksteel mutation. While we do lose the miracle ability, I do think that the irrigated farmland is going to help us a lot more than the mutation right now. Unless our opponents just happen to have a very powerful commander out, in which case the Darksteel mutation is the automatic choice. We're going to pay 1 to use Ponder to look at the top 3 of our deck and rearrange them in any order and draw a card. We haven't played a land yet, so we're going to go ahead and put Tainted Field on top, followed by Athreos, and then we will draw the Tainted Field. This means that on our next turn, we are going to have a very powerful move to play. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. We are going to let it be our opponent's turn. We only summon the 1 Shark Typhoon, and we have 2 more tokens that were spawned as a direct result of playing our Ponder. This gives us lots of blockers to protect us throughout the game, but they are not super important. We are about to Wombo combo our opponents, and that is far more important. We're going to tap 2 mana, and with this 2 mana, we are going to cycle the irrigated farmland out of our hand, allowing us to draw 1 card, and that card is Athreos. Athreos gets a discount of 4 due to the miracle ability of our commander, so we will tap 2 mana and play the Athreos. It still comes down as a 6-costed card, so both of our Shark Typhoons will see that and will generate 2 incredibly big 6/6 sharks. And Athreos, being on the board, now says at the beginning of our end step we can put coin counters on cards and steal them from our opponents. Our next turn comes up, and we have a Brainstone and a Secluded Step. Let's go ahead and keep the Secluded Step on top of the library, and we'll put the Brainstone in our hand from our commander's ability. While we didn't get to do the Miracle ability on this turn, we will do the Miracle ability on an opponent's turn, and that is just as potent. So we play Brainstone down, and we go ahead and tap 2 mana to cast or to blow up the Brainstone, allowing us to draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards back on top of our library. Let's go ahead and put Terminus in, and let's put Spirit Sister's Call in. This will give us a good follow-up play when we pass to our opponents. Also, we generate 2 shark tokens from the Shark Typhoon. We can't forget that we have many shark tokens. On an opponent's turn, we are going to go ahead and tap the Tainted Field. Assuming that I tapped my mana not like a dum-dum, we should have Sunken Hollow and Atakar Wastes up instead of the way that I had it tapped before. We tap the Tainted Field, we get rid of the Secluded Step from our hand, and we draw that Spirit Sister's Call. It gets a discount of 3 due to our commander's ability, allowing us to pay 2 and cast it immediately. This will generate, again, 2 more shark tokens that are going to be 5/5s due to our Shark Typhoon's abilities. Now we have all of these Sharknadoes out on the board and ready to cause all kinds of mayhem. Assuming we are not attacking somebody for borderline lethal on the next turn, we have that Terminus and we can Surveil. So, looking at these two, I would probably throw away the Terramorphic Expanse no matter what. The Terminus, I would go ahead and cast immediately if our opponents had a board state that needed to be taken care of right now. If they didn't have a board state that needed to be taken care of, then I would instead not care. I would just keep the Terminus in my hand and let it be a thing we have access to on following turns. Either way, we're in a very good spot right now. A shit ton of Shark tokens. We have Athreos on to steal our opponent's stuff. And if we happen to play a single enchantment on the board, we will generate even more Shark tokens thanks to the Shark Typhoon and the copy enchantment combo that we played. All in all, this does end up meaning that we didn't get to use our commander's ability on our turn as often as I would have liked, but that got supplemented by being able to do it on our opponent's turn, which is just as powerful. Do note that we can replicate this exact board state with a Sigil of the Empty Throne or an Archon of Sun's Grace to lesser but still very powerful effect, letting you know that the deck will have plenty of ways of lethaling your opponents down. But this is where I've got to throw it to y'all. Do you like the deck as it came out of the box? Do you enjoy the upgrades that were made to the deck? I want to know what y'all's thought process is. I think the deck is fantastic. I like a different view on Enchantress decks, and I think that Aminatou was a wonderful choice by Wizards of the Coast, but I think that the changes we made to the deck are going to be way more significant. Having access to cycling and drawing on our opponent's turns, having access to Leyline of Anticipation opens up the consistency for the deck far more than how the original version of the deck was built. So I want to know what y'all think, and if you have any criticisms of this deck, if you think there's any improvements I could make to these videos, anything like that, any feedback like that is welcome in the comment section below. That said, let me know what y'all think. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Briskrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Mark Anthony, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying that, you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one.